my pleasure to call the meeting to order and to thank all of you for being here with us. This is our first time being back together for one of our public meetings after the pandemic, having held the prior ones virtually. So we're very delighted to have everyone here in the room with us and also to welcome the people who are joining us online as well. The first thing that I wanted to do is to introduce our panelists here tonight, who are all members of the board of directors, and Mary is one of our key staff members. So Sue Kirsch is the chair of our finance committee. Pat Seiger is the co-chair of our development committee. Joel Bernard is the chair of our facilities committee. Laura Miller is the co-chair of our IDEA committee, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access. And Mary Monahan is the Director of Public Services for the library. And so what we're going to do tonight, we have a State of the Library presentation. And so all the panelists will be speaking about their area of expertise and sharing what's been happening in the library over the past year. The public meeting is something that we on the board really look forward to because it's an opportunity for us to connect with all of our stakeholders, with our valued partners and supporters and friends and the community as a whole. So our mission here is to promote a lifetime of learning and literacy. And the best way for us to do that is to engage with the people who we are striving to serve to understand how to serve them better. So we're deeply grateful for everyone being here with us tonight. In addition to the people who are up here with me, we also have some other members of our board with us in the audience. So if the other board members could stand up just to be recognized, that would be wonderful. The overall format tonight is, first, we're going to go through our State of the Library presentation. Then we're going to have a question and answer session. Then we're going to recognize some of our valued partners and thank them for their help. And then we'll have some time just to spend together and enjoy some cookies afterward. And so please seek out the board members and the staff who are here tonight and get to know them and tell them what's on your minds. In addition to our board and our staff, we have a number of people here who are supporters and volunteers and friends of the library and participants in our partner organizations. And we just wanted to recognize all of you as well. And thank you for being here. I also wanted to acknowledge and thank Mary Frances Cooper, who's not here with us tonight, but she was our executive director who retired at the end of last year. After more than a decade of leadership with the library. She really left a mark and we miss her and we wish her well. And the board's selection committee is hard at work right now identifying our next executive director. And we are finalizing that process and are excited to announce the next executive director shortly. And so that will usher in a really thrilling new chapter for all of us and for the library. So what I'd like to do now is hand it off to Sue Kirsch, the chair of our finance committee, and we'll start our State of the Library presentation. Thank you all again for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Lee. So good evening, everyone. So the finance committee is going to share some information about how the library fared during 2020 and 2021. As we look ahead, and we'll have a couple of comments on the 2022 budget and what we anticipate for the future. So the slide really begins at 12/31/19. The library is on a calendar year end, and so you can see the performance, and I have some comments between the pre-pandemic activities through where we are at 12/31/2021. So as a result of the economic impact from the COVID-19 pandemic, the library experienced a 20% cut in revenue from its largest funder in 2020. And you can see that on this sharp line. This equated to a loss of approximately 4.4 million that you can see on the blue line of the slide. But fortunately, through the hardworking efforts of the team here, the finance team, the executive leadership, and the board, the library was able to secure a Paycheck Protection Program grant, commonly known as PPP. This grant was funded by the federal government and provided funds to pay library staff during the shutdown, as well as when operations were not at full capacity. It should be noted that the PPP program that provided such desperately needed funding has closed, and no further grants will be available from this program. The library was also the recipient of one-time CARES Act funding through Allegheny County. This special funding allowed the library really to pivot and be agile and nimble as it related to the need to provide much needed services during the pandemic. So this funding was utilized to provide members with access to electronic resources, Wi-Fi hotspot lending, book giveaways, and work study pods to accommodate the need for social distancing. This funding, the CARES Act funding, will provide partial support for a critical countywide shared services initiative over the next several years. As mentioned, capacity restrictions through May, 2 more waves of the COVID virus, and labor market shortages continue to curtail operations throughout 2021. So while COVID and labor market conditions resulted in salary savings, as you can see on the graph, these savings are not anticipated to recur once the library fills open staff positions, so that public service hours may be increased. So you can see the expense savings that occurred by looking at the orange line above. So despite a significant decrease in the grant revenue that was received during the year, the library did in fact close out 2020 and 2021 with operating surpluses. But once again, that was solely due to the fact that we had restricted operations and the one-time funding from the CARES Act and the PPP programs. So be rest assured that the library is focused on financial stability and sustainability while ensuring that the library resources continue to meet the evolving needs of this great community. It should be noted that the library is not projecting future surpluses from operations. So with that, we'll turn to the next slide. So what's very critical to understand that when we look at the total operations of the library here, we look at it from the expense side of the expense side of the house. And as you can see in this pie chart, 85% of all expenses, so that's 85% of all expenses in 2021 were spent on program service activities. The balance of the expenses go to support critical infrastructure, whether it's general and administrative expenses or the need to underwrite fundraising activities, and Pat Seiger will share the results of those activities. So when we look at this and analyze the effectiveness of how we spend our dollars here, we do also benchmark against what charity watchdogs and donors are most interested in. They want to ensure that at least program service expenditures are in excess of 70% of all total operating expenses. So the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh does a remarkable job and proudly exceeds those benchmarks that have been established by the public at large. So let me turn our attention then to 2022 revenue and expenses. So as we kick off and look at 2022, the library has in fact budgeted for a return to pre-pandemic hours of operations and expanded programming. The pie chart, if you're following along on the left, shows the broad categories of expenses in relation to the total operating budget. So as you can see, library operations are a people business. All the expenses are heavily staff driven, as reflected by the fact that when you look at the expenses, salary and benefit expenses consume approximately 64% of the annual operating budget. Materials, And when we talk about materials, we're not talking just about physical books. We're also talking about the vast library of ebooks, databases, and other media types are the next largest expense in the operating budget. So these expenses account for about 13% of the annual operating budget. So less than a quarter of the budget is left to fund what you might other critical expenses that keep the doors open. And they include such things as occupancy, maintenance on this great facility, utilities, program supplies, debt service, as well as professional fees. So when we look at the pie chart and focus in on the revenue, what you might notice, and you're looking at the right-hand side of the document, public funding accounts for 98% of total revenue. And I'll repeat that. Public funding accounts for 98% of the total revenue. And of that 98%, 2/3 of our operational funding comes from a single funding agency, and that's the Regional Asset District, commonly referred to as RAD. Because of the pandemic, support from RAD has not been restored to 2019 levels. So we're still not getting the same level of funding from RAD that we received in 2019. But in spite of this cutback, the library continues to plan to proceed with returning to full service operating hours and programs. But in order to meet and produce a balanced budget in 2022, the operating surpluses that were earned in 2020 and 2021 are necessary to fund a balanced budget in 2022 to cover what we expect to be otherwise an operating deficit. So be rest assured that senior leadership team, the finance committee, and the board at large is very mindful of the fact that one-time stimulus funding will not recur. And the countywide shared service initiatives will require significant investment. So increases in the library's revenue streams will be needed to provide and continue to provide the level of services that are expected by this community. The Finance Committee is very focused on this work, as well as the challenges that lay ahead. So when we think about the budget here and the finances at the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, I've spent a lot of time talking about the operational budget, the budget that keeps the doors open, the lights on, and allows for us to meet tonight. But the other side of the equation is the capital budget. So when we think about the building, when we think about repairs, when we think about ADA compliance needs, that's all funded, or renovations, it's all funded out of the capital budget. So in the slide, you can see during the last couple of years, there were three major renovations that occurred here. Facilities at Mount Washington, as well as at LAMP and CLP downtown. So when we think about funding capital projects, we have to finance them. So they're financed by donations, grants, corporations, foundations, as well as public financing. And this is needed to help underwrite all these necessary renovations. So when we looked at that, the efforts that resulted in these renovations were a result of raising over $12 million in capital for these three major renovations. Now, I know my colleague Joel will be talking about a lot more of the details, but that's just to give you a sense for, it was about $12 million that was needed to underwrite these significant renovations and keep our library open and operating in a safe manner. So that concludes my prepared comments for tonight, and I believe I'll turn it back to you, Leif, then.
Thank you very much, Sue. And next we're going to hear from Pat Steiger, who is the co-chair of our development committee.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. I actually have a very uplifting, not that that wasn't so, very uplifting report that I want to share with you. First of all, I actually want to thank all of you on a rainy night for coming out. That's very important to us to see smiling faces here. And I know that you love the library, which is why you're here. But I wanted to tell you that in 2015, I was much younger then, we embarked on a wonderful campaign to raise $50 million. And there were board members, I'm looking at a few, that were suspicious that we couldn't do it. Well, let me just tell you that I'm pleased to announce that we're really almost at $45 million, which is quite significant, or 90% of our goal. And I believe that that requires an applause, frankly. So much of these funds came from, varied sources, but I know that many of you have contributed as much as you possibly can to support the library. So once again, I want to say thank you. Last year, we actually raised $6 million, which was pretty significant. And that seems to be where we are in terms of an annual raise now. But all gifts of all sizes mean something to us. We've had children literally come with $1, which is meaningful, and to me is, ones that have many more zeros. So with your support, I want to give you some information about what we're investing this money in. The first is workforce and economic development. This helps all of us. Adults acquire new skills, makes connections, and expands our horizons. In the area of neighborhood vitality, your gifts ensure that our libraries are serving neighborhood anchors, helping those who need library services the most. So you're providing this welcome, vibrant spaces and resources to folks in your community specifically. Last year, we received 7,400 gifts from over 4,000 people. So we clearly have lots of people that love our library. Of those, 280 are people that we call sustainers, and those are folks that actually give on a regular basis. In addition to supporting the library day-to-day operations, our board continues to work on diversifying our funding streams. For those of you that remember when we did the referendum many years ago, one of the things that we promised everyone is that all taxpayers is that we would diversify. So what we've done that I think is really working out beautifully is we formed called Carnegie Library Pittsburgh Circle. And it's a recognition of donors who have made gifts to our endowment, which is really through either wills or their estate plan. We are committed, frankly, to increasing this endowment. It's a permanent fund that's invested, and only really a very small percentage of the income is used to support essential library services on an annual basis. Since 2018, we've raised an additional $1.7 million for our circle, and we have 27 new funds. Here's some good news. I like to say this at the end of 2021 and certainly not the first quarter of 22. Our endowment value is $23.6 million. It may be a little less since the market has changed, but nonetheless, we're very optimistic, and this allows us to do things that we would normally not be able to do without that support. We're excited to continue to work hard. One of the things that's gone on is the board has established a new campaign. It's called Potential, and it's to match any new endowment money that we can secure at this time. So we're very excited about that. And if you'd like to talk to me or Pat Winter at the back or other folks from the board about your interest in that, well, we're having our cookies, please do that. We've set a very ambitious goal for 22, another $6 million that I'm absolutely sure that we'll raise. One of the good signs of people that love the library, I know that recently it was Wednesday actually was Library Giving Day, and I'm sure it was in your inbox multiple times. But in a single day, 340 donors contributed $25,000. So if that's any indication of the folks that, like you, that love the library, I feel like we've got a great 2022 ahead. Once again, my message to each of you is a sincere thank you for participation and being here tonight. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Joel Bernard, who is the chair of our facilities committee.
Good evening, everybody. So you heard from Sue Kirsch about how the capital dollars that are being expended in the three libraries that we'll be talking about in a future project. And then you heard from Pat about the raising of those capital dollars. And for me, it's how you spend them. So with no further ado. So the last public meeting was in 2019, which sometimes seems like it was forever ago. And sometimes it seems like it was just yesterday, but it's been a while. And I'm so glad to see everybody here. The first project we want to talk about is the Mount Washington renovation. And this was a $4 million project that needed quite a few upgrades. The addition expanded the library size from 4,900 square feet to 7,500. So it's a 52% increase. And if you go to the next slide, and that, so now Mount Washington is now fully accessible. It has an entrance ramp, an accessible entrance, and most importantly, a two-stop elevator. And on the next slide, you can see that there's a dedicated children's and teen and adult areas and some small meeting rooms for community use. Energy efficient heating, and this is one of the things you'll hear about quite a bit, which is energy efficient heating and lighting has been an important piece of all of the projects that have been worked on recently, just to bring down operating costs, but also you can have much better lighting inside the libraries and spend a lot less with the new LED fixtures. And so this project was won a Building Excellence Award in February of this year from the Master Builders Association. And Mount Washington won in the category of construction of less than $10 million. And it means that the project was recognized by the peers in the building industry, and it acknowledges the work by the contractors, the architects, and the owners. And we're very proud of that. The next slide is the downtown renovation of the library. And this was a $5.3 million project. And it included expanding up to the second floor to increase the library space from 12,700 square feet to 21,400. So that's a 68% increase. The next slide will show a couple additional views of the front entrance and some signage on Smithfield Street. The next slide shows inside for the sort of the two-story arcade, which is accessed by a monumental stair, and it's a really nice area and inviting feeling for the patrons. And then on the next slide, they've got some flexible spaces in here. Again, meeting rooms for large groups, co-working spaces, quiet working groups. Again, this is the trend going forward about remote work doesn't mean you're working at home. Remote work, and whether it's for your job or whether you're in school, remote can be at your public library. The next slide shows the dedicated children's and teen spaces, and there's including rooms for programming and a family restroom, and it's a fully accessible two-story space equipped with a two-stop elevator and accessible restrooms on both levels. The next project is LAMP, and LAMP is the Library for Accessible Media for Pennsylvanians, and this is on Baum Boulevard. It used to have the acronym LBPH, but this is kind of a rebranding of the library, and this $2.7 million renovation, about 10,700 square feet, all on the first floor, and it has new automated corner entrance doors, storefront windows, and a canopy. So it really has a much better street presence, and it's also easier for challenge visitors and volunteers to access the building. The next slide shows before and after pictures of two of the interior views, and one of the big deals here was to getting rid of that suspended ceiling system, and it's opened it up so that some of the Art Deco detailing can still be seen on the inside, and it allows for some LED lighting to really punctuate the space and just make it really bright and cheerful. There's one more slide of two more, before and after interior spaces for LAMP as well. On the next slide, if I'm up to speed here, yes, the main library and front entrance. So this is a project coming up in this building that we're in now, which is going to be improving accessibility right at the front entrance of the library with a lift. And right now, the project is still in design documentation, and the estimate is that the work is going to cost about $2.1 million. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that there's a kind of a metal ramp that's gotten a little deteriorated that needs to be replaced. There's going to be work on the front entry and vestibule. we're going to restore and maintain the historic materials, but we're going to reconfigure it so that it's a more easily negotiated and it's a user-friendly library entrance. And then again, on the last slide, you can see the locations where this new lift, it's a Lula lift, limited use, limited accessibility, will be placed. And you've now heard from the 3 projects that were done, and from this one, you've heard accessibility, 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 and that has been extremely important to the library for our patrons so that everybody can access it. And that's all I have. And I think I'm turning it over to Laura Miller.
Hi, I'm Laura Miller. I want to make sure I'm not yelling, but also you can hear me. So, okay, great. I'm Laura Miller. I am the co-chair of the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Committee. Unfortunately, my co-chair, Kenyoki Crowell, is unable to join us this evening. This committee is a new committee to the board. So while we're the new kid on the block, I wanted to do a little review to explain how this has really been a concept that's been around long before we formalized the committee. So just to take you through the strategic plan and sort of our how we got here. In 2017, the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh introduced its 5-year strategic plan, and it had a vision to focus on patron and community-based programs and services. The 6 interconnected areas of focus were created, and the first was our library is inclusive and equitable. There, the library pledged we will embody inclusion and equity in our services and our staff, programs, and collections. Since then, the Board of Trustees has undertaken efforts to steer and support our goal of being an anti-racist organization. Consistent with that work, which even predates my involvement with the board and the events of 2020, it became important to take another look. And so we wanted to create an EDI task force with the purpose to review and refresh board-related policies and statements around race and social equity. We were further tasked with defining diversity strategy for the board and our sort of overall aspirations. And we engaged a professional facilitator, Dr. Michael Quigley from Robert Morris University, lent his guidance and leadership. Under his guidance and leadership, we created a task force. And so there are members of the board here today who were part of that initial task force. And we did adaptive work, which included readings. It included conferences and courageous conversations with each other to really engage around what this work should look like. The task force was divided into 2 subgroups. One was an internal board focus on diversity inclusion, and the other was board stewardship within our library institution to focus on being more diverse and inclusive and really taking a new, fresh look. Based on that work, we developed a board statement on DE&I. We developed a policy and process for recommendations moving forward. And in the spring of 2021, after many, many meetings and conversations, that task force shared an assessment tool on becoming an anti-racist multicultural organization and made priority recommendations to the board, which included a new DEI committee, which is our IDEA committee now, conducting a full board assessment and engaging the board in development of an equity statement. Further recommendations have included updating our board policies, using trustee recruitment as a pilot, really to go back and look at it with a fresh set of eyes, and working with our senior library staff to develop stewardship processes. So not a new concept, but definitely something that we wanted to refresh and take another look at and try to understand, obviously, that DE&I means something different to everyone and be open to voices. So even if we didn't have the answers, just to listen, be committed to listening. So on the next slide, which we may have, there we go. In May of 2021, the Board of Trustees approved an anti-racism and multicultural statement. The introduction is what you see behind me and is meant to be a strong statement of purpose and to guide the work of the board moving forward. It's a strong agreement from the board to pursue actual actions to continue this work. And with that, there was a resolution to formalize an IDEA committee as a standing board committee that was unanimously approved in July of 2021. And I have been honored to be the co-chair of. We really didn't kick off our formal work until September of 2021. So when I say this is new, it's new in being a formal committee. And in that short amount of time, we have been able to update our board survey to really get a full picture of what the board envisions for our initiatives moving forward. We've conducted meetings with other nonprofits because certainly we are not the experts and we would love to share ideas collectively. And we have actually had some conversations with other nonprofit boards that have been very eye-opening and very helpful. So we hope that we have been able to do the same in sharing our learning with them. And, we have connected with the library staff, EDI, which they are wonderful and they're probably even ahead of where we are. So we want to make sure to maintain that connection moving forward, because how can we efficiently govern without knowing what the staff feels at the same time? So moving forward, we are really focused on doing board-wide trainings and very excited to collaborate with our new president and director on a work plan for future initiatives. So just as soon as that person gets here, we're going to grab them. And that sort of brings me to our last slide, which is to talk a little bit about our last director. Mary Frances Cooper had retired, as was mentioned, and we were really proud to recognize her contributions to the mission and vision of the library and her commitment to being inclusive and equitable in those library services in the creation of the Future Library Leaders Fund. Now, this is a restricted fund. Anyone may contribute, and it will support the recruitment and development of our future library leaders that represent diverse cultures, races, and communities. It's intended to create a pathway to librarianship. And so consideration is given to those who have been traditionally underrepresented in library service. The investment in the next generation of our library leaders will have significant benefits for the profession, for CLP, and for the communities that we serve. We're proud of the work that's led us to this point, and we recognize that we have a lot to learn and a lot to do, and we are open and listening. And I think that that is probably the most important part. We will continue to work closely with our board committee, with our staff, and with our community to make sure that we are focused on inclusion, equity, and diversity in our services, staff, programs, and collections. So as we eat cookies, if you have ideas, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Mary Monahan and I'm the Director of Public Services here at the library, and I will be giving the update on library services this year. So our last public board meeting was in 2019. And our then president and director, Mary Frances Cooper, gave her State of the Library address and concluded by outlining all the progress we were going to make on our strategic plan over the next few years. Well, little did we know what the next few years was going to bring. So on Friday, March 13th, 2020, CLP made the decision to close all of our libraries to help flatten the curve of COVID-19. At the time, we planned to be closed for about 2 weeks until the end of March. We opened that Saturday for the community to come in and get their last minute books to stock up on reading materials. And then we closed our doors and we didn't reopen until July. Immediately, we started planning for ways to sustain library service for the next 2 weeks and beyond, as it quickly became clear that this closure was going to last a lot longer than any of us thought. I'll share with you today some of the ways that we did respond to the pandemic, the lessons that we learned, and the ways that it is affecting our services going forward. So first, our team of managers and coordinators quickly developed methods for reference and readers advisory to continue through centralized phone lines and online chat tools that they could respond to while they were working from home. Our chat widget launched on March 19th with no fanfare. And on the very first day, we got 20 questions from patrons ranging from, "Are you really closed?" to complex genealogy questions. By the end of the month, we were averaging over 40 chat reference inquiries a day, and that trend continues till today. Prior to the pandemic, we weren't sure if there was an audience or a demand for virtual or online reference services, and now we know that there is. We launched the Digital Skills Help Desk, which connected library users with, or connected users with library staff by phone, by chat, and by video call. Staff assisted customers throughout the pandemic with building digital literacy skills, device troubleshooting, and accessing library e-resources. Those virtual one-on-one appointments expanded to helping patrons look for jobs, helping entrepreneurs start new businesses, and just general reference inquiries. Offering access to the expertise of library staff remotely has proven to be a valuable way to provide library service and maintain safety. To meet the needs of readers and researchers, we increased our purchases of downloadable and audiobooks, and we expanded access to databases such as Ancestry, which up until then was only available in the library building. And unfortunately, I just read that Ancestry is turning off that home access, so get it in while you can. And use of ebooks increased by 50% over the very first year of the pandemic. Of course, we understand that not all of our patrons can or want to access ebooks. We launched a program called Here to Help, where physical titles, particularly focused on anti-racism and the Black experience, were purchased and distributed to little libraries all across the city. In 2020 and 2021, we selected and purchased close to 30,000 books to give away to children and teens. We distributed those books to about 25 partner organizations, including city parks, the Boys and Girls Club, Trying Together, the Homeless Children's Educational Fund, and Pittsburgh Public Schools, so that they could share those titles with the families they were serving. Online programming began in the spring of 2020, including virtual story times, virtual book clubs, and the Stay Home and Read online reading program. As many of our programs and services moved online, it quickly became clear that the digital divide in our community, as in communities across the country, is a very real problem, whether from lack of devices, lack of connectivity, or the need to develop skills. There are people in our region who are unable to access information and resources without the physical computing and help provided in our libraries. One of the things that we did to help address the digital divide was purchase 550 hotspots and over 200 Chromebooks that we used to loan to students of all ages to use while they were attending school virtually, as everyone was at that time. Students and families from across the city borrowed those for access throughout the school year. We were also able to provide hotspots to 10 libraries in Allegheny County in communities that had been designated as distressed by the state. And they in turn loaned those hotspots to their patrons for internet access. Another lesson that we learned was how many library users depend on the social connections forged at the library through regular visits and programming. One population that felt that need the most were the patrons across Pennsylvania who use our Library of Accessible Media for Pennsylvanians, or LAMP. In cooperation with the Free Library of Philadelphia, CLP manages this federally funded program that, among other things, provides audio and large print books by mail to residents of the entire state. Because we were closed and unable to send new materials to these patrons, they became quite desperate, as this service is often their only window on the world. Thanks to the dedicated staff and management at LAMP, we were able to restart that service as one of the very first things we did when we got the go-ahead to begin reopening. Over the past 2 years, we have followed the advice of CDC, Allegheny County Health Department, and the Office of Commonwealth Libraries to phase our reopening process. You know, if you'll remember, in the very beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of confusion about how the virus was spread. To be as safe as possible, we quarantined all materials that were returned to the library for 5 days and more. That meant that it took a long time for items to get from one place to another. And if you had anything on hold during that period, you know how long it took. While that guidance was disproven relatively quickly, we did spend a lot of time instituting other safety measures before we even allowed staff or patrons into our buildings. And those included installing plexiglass barriers, buying PPE, and rearranging spaces to provide for social distancing. Our first foray into public services was curbside pickup of holds. The next phases were opening to the public with limited occupancy and reduced services. And those have all increased throughout 2020 and 2021, although we did have a brief return to curbside services during the height of the Delta variant. We are continuing our journey back to pre-pandemic levels of services by gradually reintroducing in-person programming and increasing hours. As we look to the future, we understand now the importance of continuing to offer our services both in person and virtually. During the pandemic, with the option of participating in programs and services online, many new users discovered the library who perhaps never would have come to see us in person. Our adult programs, which on a good day would draw 7 or 8 people into the libraries, now see attendance 2 and 3 times that when we offer them online. We are all so proud of the efforts of all of our staff at CLP who continued to offer services to the library even at the height of the pandemic. Speaking of access to the library, I am thrilled to share the news, if you don't know already, that CLP is officially fine-free. Yay! Very exciting. So the idea of going fine-free has been percolating across libraries in the library world for some time. There have been doubts about how effective fines are in changing behavior and how they served as a barrier to library use, particularly for children. In fact, studies done in public libraries have demonstrated that charging fines does not impact whether items are returned on time or at all. And it's been shown that the fear of accumulating fines makes families with children, particularly those who live in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods, less likely to borrow books. Many of our library staff, including me, have heard parents say to children that they may not borrow books because they don't want to have to pay fines. And that is a heartbreaking thing to hear. CLP began a pilot program in 2019 at 3 of our locations, Allegheny, East Liberty, and Knoxville, in cooperation with a number of libraries in the county to stop charging fines to see what impact it would have. We found at those libraries that more people registered for library cards, more people used their library cards, circulation went up, and donations went up as well. And that demonstrated to us that fines were just simply a barrier to library use. Now, of course, the pilot was cut short due to the pandemic, but in October 21, the board passed a resolution to make our fine-free status official. We were able to eliminate outstanding fines on the library cards of over 38,000 Pittsburghers, including over 2,000 children. Any materials returned overdue going forward will not accrue fines, but we do expect that patrons who lose or never return items do pay for them. We are thrilled that we are able to join with other Allegheny County libraries and libraries across the country to remove this barrier to library use. Prior to the pandemic, the Regional Asset District, which is the organization that distributes the additional 1% sales tax in Allegheny County and is a major funder of libraries, asked CLP and the Allegheny County Library Association to work together to find ways to better support the other libraries in Allegheny County by providing back of house services so that they could better focus their energy on serving their patrons and communities. There are 46 independent libraries in Allegheny County, of which CLP is one, and they each have their own board, their own director, and their own funding structure. And they must each find a balance between performing their administrative work and serving their communities. There's a long history of cooperation between CLP and the county libraries. CLP is funded by the Commonwealth of PA to provide certain services, including the daily delivery of materials and interlibrary loan. County libraries and CLP all contribute to a shared pot of funding that is used to purchase e-resources, e-books, and databases so that all residents have equal access. A few years ago, CLP began providing cooperative and centralized cataloging, processing, and purchasing services for materials and books. And approximately half the libraries in Allegheny County are taking advantage of that system. ACLA, or the Allegheny County Library Association, provides support in finance, budgeting, and bookkeeping for libraries. CLP has begun to provide access to consulting for human resources and fundraising, and we will soon roll out a suite of website services for other libraries. A lot of work has gone into developing the processes and systems needed to support these services, and it will continue to be a big part of the work we do going forward. But the investment of time and effort is worth it, as it will ultimately mean better services for all the residents of Allegheny County. From books to high tech, library cards give patrons access to a wide variety of services, and now they are also a ticket to culture in the city. RadPass is a new online ticket lending system that gives Allegheny County Library users 18 and over access to free or discounted tickets at regional attractions, including but not limited to Carnegie Museums and Science Center, the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, the New Hazlitt Theater, Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures, and Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, just to name a few, all by just using their library card. RadPass is coordinated by Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh with generous support from the Regional Asset District and participating organizations. And we thank the RAD for their support of this program and of libraries in general. Check out all of the possibilities at radpass.org. So Laura Miller talked a little bit about what the board was doing and focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion. Similarly, the library administration and staff has been focused at looking at policies, procedures, and practices of the library using that lens, using the lens of equity, diversity, and inclusion. There is a staff EDI committee established in 2018 that continues to help guide our efforts to ensure that these values are incorporated in all of the work that we do. The EDI committee is focused on supporting staff through education, communication, consultation, and feedback to ensure we're making progress. Staff from across the CLP system participate in a variety of opportunities for personal and professional growth in the areas of equity, diversity, and inclusion. And all of our managers recently took part in a program called Hooray for Dissent. We partner with many local organizations who focus on providing services to diverse community and who are working to build a more equitable and inclusive Pittsburgh. And some of those are listed on the slide above. And finally, neighborhood ambassadors. CLP launched the Neighborhood Ambassadors Program as a new community engagement initiative that will build a core network of library advocates who will be a voice for CLP within the community and a voice for the community within CLP. The first cohort included 10 ambassadors from 9 city council districts, several of whom are with us tonight. And I would like to invite Junietta Seal up to the podium to share with you a little bit more about her experience serving as a neighborhood ambassador.
I would first like to applaud and thank the board for guiding such a large, important, significant ship through the environment that I'm looking out at faces without masks, with smiles. I was hugging people, I was touching people, I was like reveling in what the library does for all of us every day of the year. You may think I have a big ego because I have to give you a little bit about my background. I was raised first 5 years of my life in Panther Holler. If you go to CMU, you probably know that you go down Bouquet and there's a train track and then there's this really dirt road. And for me as a child, all I saw was a slate hill. I heard a railroad whistle. I looked up to my right, I saw a bridge. I looked up to my left, I saw another bridge. And the 2 destinations that took me out of that holler was Isley's Ice Cream and the library. Those are the 2 places that I frequented, look forward to going to. And when you talk about being an ambassador for the library, it's like being an ambassador for who I am because of the library. It's part of my DNA. Um, The reason why I'm talking a little bit about me, and I warned 3 people in this room to do this, because I'm passionate about the library. I love the library. I love words like idea and access, because I brag to everyone that my 2 most important cards are my free bus pass and my library card, because both give me access to the entire world by reading, exploring, and even my ambitions. I know you heard that August Wilson got his education and his degree from a library. Well, with an apple and a candy bar, when I first got my job on a place called Wall Street, which I didn't know what that was because the first job I had on Wall Street, the building was actually on Wall Street. So this is naive little June from Pittsburgh, starting a very exciting career in finance. But with an apple and a candy bar and being introduced to the open stack section of the main library, which as a child, that was my favorite place to go find me a little cubby corner with a candy bar and to read my way through the stacks. But when I got to corporate America, that's the first thing I did. I took my apple, my candy bar, and the inspiration from the library, and I read my way through the corporate library every day before work, at lunchtime, and a half an hour before I left. And when I left Wall Street, I pierced the glass ceiling as a senior vice president of a major international firm with a high school degree and 1.5 years of college. Thank you. I tell all my kids, I have a program. I bring all of me, my lived experiences, my skills, my secrets, even my secret ingredients to my oatmeal cookies. I freely give them because I feel so truly blessed. And when I think about the library being open again and the way it's opening virtually, taking consideration of low-tech me, high-touch me, and solving all of my problems. When I left my house today, I couldn't find an umbrella. I had 20 umbrellas in my house, but they were all broken. And that's because of one of my programs. I tell kids on rainy days to meet me when it rains. And I pay them $1 for every broken umbrella they bring me. And so as I'm standing there in the rain, sobbing wet, all I could think about was protecting my book from the library. You know, I didn't care if my hair got wet or anything about me got wet, but I remembered I had left this in my purse. And when I say this is significant because of the kids that I work with. I've created 12 plays and they all begin with Meet Me. And it started with the first play, Meet Me at the Library. Why the library? Because it was a safe place. I didn't want what I was trying to share with them to be my knowledge, but to show them where I got that knowledge. And it was always at the library. And so my next play is going to be Crowns. And guess what? If you walk around this floor, I got the libretto, I got the sound effects, I got the tapes, I got a list of Negro spirituals, and I'm just on one floor. And I teach the kids how to do that. I was sharing with someone today with company histories. I can't tell you how many children's lives have changed because they learned a return on the investment of their time and their resources. Children have stopped selling drugs because I showed them a publicly traded company that spoke of them in an annual report as a widget, knowing that going into their kindergarten classes, they projected by 4th grade, they would occupy that prison bed or cell. I make kids read 10K statements. I have to show you company histories, and I hope you look at it, because in it, it shows how companies started with a $500 loan from a relative, or maybe my oatmeal cookie recipe, and how they are now billion-dollar companies. And I could say I brought a lot of those companies public, but with a candy bar, an apple, and a library card. But one of the things that I heard up here today was the word access. I feel guilty because as a senior citizen, I get to ride free. And the one thing that I think that is limiting our community, whether it's inclusion or racism, is lack of access. And I want to say that I was proud to be given the District of 9, which is the hub of one of the major transportation hubs. And so for the last couple of months, I've taken my free bus pass and I've ridden into every neighborhood that is in my district. I listened to conversations. I was in parts of this city that I didn't know existed. I, as a grandmother, almost 75 years old, I can tell you where the drugs are. I can tell you where the porch robbers are. I could tell you who's going home to be beaten. I just gave a woman on the bus $1 because she didn't have enough money to put into the train. And so, you know, I guess what I want to say is, again, thank you for access. Thank you for showing the hopeless that there's another way. That by reading a book, by reading a biography, or by reading a history book, they can escape the situation if it's only chapter by chapter or index by index. So come on, you all can do this anytime now. I do talk a lot. As I said, the library is part of my DNA, and I'm honored to be your ambassador. And you all are going to be mad at me because I have so much to tell you that I overheard on all these bus rides. Thank you.
Daniela, thank you. That was humbling and touching, and we're honored to have you serve as one of our ambassadors. I want to thank the other ambassadors that are here as well. I love this program. It's kind of embodies why we're all here tonight, because it provides an interface between the board and the staff with the community on the level of two people sitting next to each other on the bus. So it's critical work, and we're really lucky to have you, all of you. So thank you. The next part of the program is our Q&A session. And so we have 4 questions that were submitted in advance. So we'll go through those first. And then I know that there were some comment question cards that were left around the room. So if anybody has those, you can feel free to hand them to one of the staff or bring them up here. And there's also a microphone. So once we go through these first couple, then anybody who has a question or a comment, we'd love to hear from you. We have about 15 minutes for this part of the program, so we'll try to keep ourselves on time here. And if you do have remarks, respectfully request that you keep them to about 3 minutes. That will be really helpful to us. So here's the first question that was submitted. For several years, the local branch in Squirrel Hill has had a dwindling number of adult books on shelves and always has shipping boxes labeled "Better World Books" near the back door. We have a significant senior community, and I'm concerned that this demographic, who may not be computer savvy or have e-readers, is being underserved by this book attrition practice. Does Carnegie Library have uniform book acquisition and retention policies throughout the system? And is this information available to the public? And I neglected to say at the outset for these first couple of questions that Mary Monahan, our Director of Public Services, is going to be helping us to answer them. So, Mary.
Yeah, thank you for this question. It was really interesting, and I did a little bit of research with our collection development department. So I can tell you that the number of physical materials ordered for all of our locations has been reduced in the past couple of years, simply because we were closed and we had to focus more of our buying power on the e-resources. Now that we're open and circulation is beginning to rise, meaning that there'll be more room on the shelves for new books, our collection development department is increasing the number of physical copies. It will always be a balance, though, between physical and online materials, especially as the demand for online materials goes up. But yes, we are. I have spoken to our collection development folks about it. They are aware, particularly in Squirrel Hill, that Squirrel Hill has the largest circulation in the entire system. So a lot of times the shelves are empty because all the books are out, or they look empty because all the books are out, but we will be looking at increasing the number of physical items there. So just two quick things, just so everybody knows, Better World Books is a service that we use and a lot of libraries across the country use as we do discard books and deaccession books. Rather than throwing them away, we send them to this company called Better World Books, and there are other services that do this. They resell the books that they can, they recycle those that they can't, and a percentage of that money that they make on those materials does come back to the library. And finally, yes, our collection development policy is available on our website that talks about how we and what we purchase.
Thanks, Mary. Now that the pandemic is over, not that the pandemic is over, but after a few years, what effect has the emergence of COVID-19 had on CLP? Are certain services more in demand while others aren't sought as often? Is media content that is requested different? How can CLP respond to such a rapidly changing world? Thank you.
So this is what we talk about every day. We talk about it constantly. Yes, there are things that folks are asking for that they never did before, and it mainly is virtual access to programming, virtual access to services. What we need to do is be careful that we balance that with the more traditional in-library services, in-library programming. You know, what we do, we talk constantly about what is library service post pandemic. What do people want to see? What do, you know, how are people going to use us? Because it will be different. The only thing I can tell you is that we are trying to respond to it thoughtfully and intentionally and be really careful about the decisions that we make and how we provide service.
A summer guided kids club for kids 10 and under to play learning games together on tablets or computers is wonderful, and I think the library should pay for subscriptions to put them on tablets or computers. I would like to have a conversation about why the library can't stay open for 24 hours in downtown or Oakland in the summer.
So I shared the recommendation about the online programming, particularly for kids on tablets and computers with our youth coordinators. We have someone who focuses on children's services and someone who focuses on teen services, and I've shared that suggestion with them. We do a lot of programming online and, you know, using tablets and using computers, but I've shared that concept, that idea with them. As for the 24-hour thing, I'd be happy, you know, to have the conversation, but we just simply don't have the resources, certainly not right now, to make that happen. You know, it would be lovely if we could, and it would be lovely if enough people wanted to use the library 24 hours, but it's just not something that we could accomplish right now.
Oh, thank you. Here's a question that I suspect may have been planted by our development committee. Well, I'm just kidding. Will friends groups be able to resume fundraising soon? If so, when?
Volunteers, the library, downtown interpreters, remember we did it for almost maybe, so it's not.
Oh, no, I was only teasing my friend. I didn't mean to make light of your question. No.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the Friends Group is incredibly important, and we appreciate the support very much.
So in terms of the Friends Groups being able to start fundraising soon, there have been meetings. Julie Moore, raise your hand. Julie Moore is in charge of volunteers and our partnerships, and she has been meeting with the Friends Council, which is representatives from each of the Friends Groups, to talk about how they can start their fundraising hopefully soon. You know, the Hill District Friends used to have a great evening of jazz. The Lawrenceville Friends did this fantastic art auction that was super fun every year. So we definitely hope that the Friends are going to be able to start those fundraising activities soon. Same with volunteers. Joy had added volunteers to the written one. And right. So we're hoping to be able to have, some volunteers have started trickling in, and we hope to have a more concerted effort about that soon. Thanks.
And we have a couple more questions come in. Is there advocacy in CLP for the homeless population, especially families and students K through 12 experiencing homelessness? Specific programs, including families with children.
I can't speak to, we do partner with the Homeless Children's Education Fund. I can't speak to specific programming we do directed at homeless families. I would have to check with our coordinators. Or Marta might have an idea, maybe when we get to cookies. I can tell you one of the things that we do is there's a fantastic program by a man named Ryan Dowd. He runs a homeless shelter outside of Chicago. And he has put together this program that we require all of our staff to participate in. And he does follow-ups. It's called the Homeless now the Librarian's Guide to Homelessness, And it's a several-hour training that talks about, it's fascinating, talks about brain development and how poverty and, ongoing stress affects brain development, which affects how people react to the library, which, how people use the library, and talks about an empathy-based approach to, to those folks. It's a really super valuable training, and, all of our staff are required to take it. But if you have ideas about specific programming, we'd love to hear it.
And here are two questions that I'm going to direct to Sue Kirsch, the chair of our finance committee. Was the PPP loan forgiven? And the spend rate at 2.5% to 3%, I think this means of the endowment, seems conservative. Is the idea to build endowment principle?
So I'll take the first question. Was the PPP loan forgiven? Thankfully, yes. That was originally a loan program, and if you had qualified expenditures, then in fact that loan was forgiven. So we did receive forgiveness there. The spend rate is really a matter of the PA legislature, where the spend rate really cannot exceed any more than 7% of the endowment. So that's where you start with. So in keeping the spend rate at about 2.5 to 3%, the concept is exactly that. We want to build that endowment for future years. So as the endowment grows, 3% of the endowment provides much more funding on a regular and recurring basis. And as Pat referred to earlier, that's really a stated goal of the entire development committee.
Thanks, Sue. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Would anybody like to come up to the mic? Please.
I have a question. I just have one more. Should I stay here?
There's a microphone there if you want to.
Hi, my name is Heather Hobson. I'm the founder of Motormouth Multimedia, as well as Single Mom Defined, which is one of the partners. Renee, Jolie, Holly has all been super supportive. I just wanted to thank the library because being the founder in a position to have access to a lot of information, having a communications and marketing company, I found that although communities have access to libraries in their neighborhoods, they don't necessarily have access to the services, right? So even though the library is there, people are using the library, they don't necessarily know what services are available. So through this partnership, especially this occurred pre-pandemic, but during the pandemic, like we were just, blown away by how much was offered by the library, and then equally shocked with how much some of our members, we have probably 25,000 members, but 2,000 that are located here in Allegheny County. So this connected moms, especially those that were super stressed during remote learning, to the free tutoring programs, because, everybody knows no matter how great a school you were at, it was a struggle. The struggle was real. So moms connected to free tutoring services. They connected to lots of things online, whether it's tutors, whether it's ancestry.com, fun activities, story time. So that was really great. They also connected to, through our partnership, we have a book club. So moms used to come to the library, get the books in person. So now during the pandemic, a lot of people had the ebook access. The library provided conversation starters and put together packets. The moms now meet in person at libraries. Yesterday, they did a brunch in Lawrenceville, which was really nice. Access to Wi-Fi, the free books. We gave out lots of books during, we had like Resource Wednesdays where we did live interviews with members of the library. So it was really great. That's my daughter who's 10, and we usually focus on younger activities because that's just, where I'm at in life. But some of the moms said, hey, we have teenagers, and for them to be connected and learn about services that they didn't realize existed, like the PSAT and SAT prep and different things. So I just want to say thanks. It was, a great experience. We hope to continue the partnership, and it just really allowed people to learn that, hey, the library is more than just like a story time and checking out books. We have, in addition to the book club, the library partnership provided, I'm sorry, there's just so much share. I have 30 more seconds. The library we did a partnership for writing workshops. So we were able to contract this award-winning author who created the self-care check-in guide. She's childhood best friend, so we got her for a really nice rate. And she published books, but she was able to take the moms through a series of writing workshops. The moms are now writing blog posts. We're able to, pay moms. We did a partnership where we had a sponsored post about single mom entrepreneurs. So we were able to feature single moms, and we'll be able to do that cross posting with the library to have a larger audience. But they were connected to the services at the library to start a business, and then we were able to feature single moms. So we had a series of stories that did that. And then they're also writing their essays and different things that are going to be published throughout the year, which expands our art exhibit, which is a video and photo essay. So thank you so much on behalf of our 2,000 members.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that gives us a lovely segue into thanking our partners. And if anybody had questions that they didn't get to ask or didn't quite feel like asking, please find one of our presenters or one of our other board members or staff. And we love talking about the library. That's why we're here. Over the past 2 years of the pandemic, the library has needed help more than ever before. And we were blessed and lucky to have such strong partners in the community who helped to fill in gaps and to helped us to fulfill our mission of engaging the community in literacy and learning. So we wanted to recognize the partners who made an extraordinary difference. And so when I call the name of your organization, if you have anybody who's here, if you would be so kind as to stand up and to remain standing, so that all of us can recognize and celebrate you and thank you for your contribution. 412 Food Rescue. Allegheny County Department of Human Services. Career Link. The Diversity Business Resource Center. Free Library of Philadelphia, Division of Cultural and Civic Engagement. The JFCS Career Development Center. The League of Women Voters. MetaMesh. I love your name. Pennsylvanians for Modern Counts. Thank you, courts. Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures. Pittsburgh Pirates. Public Source. Score. Single Mom Defined. The Urban Redevelopment Authority. Vision to Learn. And the Western Pennsylvania Diaper Bank. Thank you very much. We can't do what we do without all that you do. So thank you all. We're very grateful to each and every one of these organizations and all the wonderful community service that you provide. So thank you. One more round of applause for those. This concludes our meeting. Thank you all very much for being with us tonight. We really hope that you'll stay and enjoy some refreshments. We have some delicious cookies that I've been waiting to try since I walked in. So thank you once again for being here. The meeting is now adjourned.